I knew it was an issue, but more and more I'm like, wow, this is a big deal. Prioritize content that triggers high arousal, negative emotions. Now this part is important. Over time, this constant dopamine and cortisol loop alters reward pathways in the brain. And it makes sense. You see it every day, right? Now that takes us into the next one, which even more, every single one of these that I read, I was like, oh my gosh, dude, wow, this all makes sense. What's going on, guys? So I had this conversation, if you want to call it, with AI, and it led me down to a place that I didn't anticipate going. And I'll walk you guys through the whole process of how it happened. But in this conversation with AI Gemini, it started by me just asking Google a question. I was talking to it and telling it how, now when I use AI, I literally talk into my phone. So that's how I use it. So I was talking to it saying, well, I think in terms of society, we look at society and we think, oh, times are much better now. You know, there's not as much crime, there's not as much this, not as much that. You know, there's dark web, you know, all these cyber things exist, but you think, it just happens out there. But if you know anything about the digital age, then you know there's a whole world going on behind the scenes that majority of people really ignore. And so we got into this whole conversation, and that's what I wanted to make this video about. Now, I'm not going to say this is speculation, but it kind of is, because we're talking about the future. But the writing's on the wall. It's not hard to see. If you follow certain steps, you're probably going to get to a certain place, right? So yeah, so as we kept talking about it, I was just like more and more kind of blown away, because I knew it was an issue, but more and more I'm like, wow, this is a big deal. So, okay, I'm going to go over it with you guys. I'm going to read the conversation. Unfortunately, I didn't take screenshots of my questions, so I'll just have to I'll have to explain to you what they were. But I have the screenshots of the answers. All this stuff is what Google wrote, what Google's AI version wrote, right? So it titled it, The Weaponization of Attention. It said algorithmic warfare. So what's behind the scenes? Social media and digital media companies use advanced machine learning algorithms designed for one specific metric, maximizing user attention. Now, I think we all know what that means, but we'll kind of break that down a little bit more. But let's keep going. The psychological impact. To keep you scrolling, these algorithms prioritize content that triggers high arousal, negative emotions, specifically outrage, fear, and division. Over time, this constant dopamine and cortisol loop alters reward pathways in the brain, leading to shortened attention spans, increased anxiety, and a distorted perception of reality where the world feels far more hostile than it is. Okay, now let's break it down. Again, we know these things, but it's really important for us to really absorb and really understand these things, because this is literally our future. What's behind the scenes, okay? So they're using advanced machine learning, all of media, social media, digital media, Netflix, YouTube, streaming, all of it uses algorithms. The sole purpose is to get my attention and to get your attention. That's it. Not to help you, not to benefit your life. The algorithm says, you like this? Here's more of it. You like this? Here's more of it. The sole thing is to get your attention. Now, when someone has your attention, they control you for that moment. Like if I do something erratic, I have your attention. At least for that moment, I have your attention. If I can get your attention and keep it for that moment, and then I can get it again and keep it for that moment, and get it again and keep it for that moment, and continue to do that, now I hold your attention. Not only that, now that takes us to the next part, the psychological impact. The more I do that over and over and over, okay, it says to keep you scrolling, they prioritize content that triggers high arousal, negative emotions, because that's what we're drawn to. Most people drive by a car accident, you can't help but look. We see tragedy, we can't help but watch it. There's just something in us. So they use that to continually get our attention and to keep us scrolling. Because over time, now this part is important. Over time, this constant dopamine and cortisol loop alters reward pathways in the brain. So some people just think, oh, big deal. You know, I know I need to take a break from social media. It's not just about a break. What they do literally alters neurological pathways in the brain. It says leading to shorter attention spans, increased anxiety, and a distorted perception of reality where the world feels far more hostile than it is. The way that they operate, they've already rewired our brains and how we think. And it makes sense. You see it every day, right? Shorter attention spans, increased anxiety, and a distorted perception of reality where the world feels far more hostile than it is. Now that takes us into the next one, which even more, every single one of these that I read, I was like, oh my gosh, dude. The conversation and the way that they laid it out went step by step into like, wow, this all makes sense. So hopefully you're following me so far. Okay, so what we have, their main goal is to capture your attention. Now, why would they want your attention? Well, when it comes to advertisers, everything comes down to money. We think we kind of know that, right? When it comes to advertisers, they can they can show advertisers, this is my user engagement. Now when you have that, then you can charge more money to your advertisers because that's what they want. They want eyeballs on their products, right? So again, they don't care what they have to put in front of you. They just want to keep your attention. So then they ask themselves, what's the best way to keep someone's attention? Well, psychologically, use outrage, fear, and division. So they prioritize those things to keep you scrolling. Now, let's cover this next one. It leads to a distorted perception of reality. The erosion of objective truth, information echo chambers. Okay, so let's read it and then we'll go over it, right? What's behind the scenes? Digital media is no longer universal. It is hyper-personalized. Two neighbors looking at the same platform will see entirely different versions of reality based on their data profiles. Okay, the algorithms, right? Now, the psychological impact. This creates intense cognitive biases. When people are fed an endless loop of information that only validates their fears or beliefs, it erodes their ability to tolerate nuance or dissent. It creates a state of chronic tribalism and paranoia, making shared societal problem solving nearly impossible. All right, let's break this one down. The erosion of objective truth, information echo chambers. So yeah, if I have YouTube, my neighbor has YouTube. Now we all know YouTube goes off algorithms. Everything does. It feeds us what we want to see. That's what it starts by saying. Digital media is no longer universal. It's hyper-personalized. Now, the importance of that, they talk about in the next section. It creates intense cognitive biases, meaning if you and I both are watching, let's say YouTube, for example, whatever I believe, it's feeding me information to back up what I believe. So they're constantly just backing up what we say. Whatever I believe, it throws more of it at me. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Whatever my neighbor believes might have completely different beliefs, but looking at the same platform. It's saying, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So when we have a conversation and try to get along, I'm going to be so hard in my beliefs because I've had so much validation by what I consider, let's say a newsworthy source or truth, because it shows me evidence, right? And they have solid evidence, so they're going to be hard in their beliefs. They're completely right. They're thinking, how can you think this way? What's wrong with you? Don't you watch the news? And I'm thinking the same thing. How can you think this way? What's wrong with you? Don't you watch the media? Now, one thing that fascinates me too is how on media you have people saying, oh, let's just all get along. Let's just all get along. You can see how it's nearly impossible. We're not looking at the same thing. And even those people saying, let's just all get along, whatever their feeds are, is feeding them whatever they want to see. The whole goal of all of this whole video and everything, is to show you need to be really diligent about what the information that you let in. Because this is affecting all of us. Anybody on social media, anybody on media, anybody using today's platforms is being affected by this. We're human beings. We can't help it. We want to trust each other. We want to hear information and think it's true. It takes a lot of brain power to have to filter so much and say, well, is this true? Well, is this true? Especially when truth is not universal. Truth is subjective. My truth may not be your truth. It may not be your truth. It may not be your truth. Truth is subjective. Truth, in my opinion, to me, in and of itself doesn't really exist. Truth is subjective. However, the point being, on the surface, media says, oh, we want everyone to get along, but behind the scenes, to achieve their goal of capturing attention, the methods that they're using are not leaning towards all of us getting along and all of us working together. We have to understand whatever information we're getting is not the absolute truth. That's why taking a day off from social media doesn't do anything. Taking a week off is not as important as you understanding that everything you take in is going to shape your thought process and shape your beliefs. The only way to change it is to start to question those beliefs and say, where did this belief come from? Why do I believe this? Well, the next section goes over this. So it says hypersurveillance and normalcy bias. We'll cover what the normalcy bias is. It says, what's behind the scenes? Every smart device, app, and digital interaction harvests micro data points. Your location, how long you linger on a photo, your typing speed, and your private conversations. The psychological impact. People suffer from normalcy bias, the psychological tendency to believe that because a catastrophe hasn't happened to them yet, everything is fine. To function daily, people engage in a form of collective cognitive dissonance. They know they're being tracked, but they sweep it under the rug because the alternative, disconnecting from modern society, feels too difficult. Okay, so the normalcy bias. We know that, like it just said, we know we're being tracked. I mean, think about it. If someone told you, look, someone's following you, they know your location, they know everything about your social media accounts, they know where you're at, they're listening to all your conversations, it would cause paranoia. But that's exactly literally exactly what's going on. Most of us have our phones on us 24/7. it's listening to everything. And most of us know this. We know this somewhere in the back of our mind. We say, well, yeah, I know they're following everybody. Again, this is not to be conspiratorial. This is how it works. We do this because the alternative to disconnect from modern society feels too difficult. I'm not telling you to disconnect. Like, I'm not saying to live like that. Like, I couldn't live like that, at least at the moment. Maybe one day I'll live in a cabin somewhere and be cool. What I'm talking about more so is people that just go with the flow. When you just scroll, when you take whatever comes into your feed, that's when it becomes dangerous, because as we just talked about, it's literally rewiring how your brain sees the world. Not just the world, how your brain sees your family members, how your brain sees your self-identity. They're shaping all of your beliefs without telling you that's what they're doing. But they know that's just how the mind works. You put something in front of someone often enough, get emotionally involved, our brain believes it, it becomes a core belief, and now we operate our life based on these beliefs. These ideas that we never really agreed to put in our mind in the first place. This next one says why society is terrified to look. This one we'll go over quickly. It says, as a cybersecurity student, because I like to study cybersecurity, among the million other things I like to study, it says you look at systems through the lens of vulnerability and exploitation, but for the average person, truly acknowledging the depth of this digital manipulation triggers a state of learned helplessness. Meaning, if we all really, really take it into our gut that this is happening, which it is, we will be in the state of learned helplessness where it's like, well, what else am I supposed to do? Like, our nervous system literally cannot handle it if we were to really absorb the impact this could have. So we just kind of write it off and sweep it under the rug, right? That's what this says. It says if they accept that their thoughts are being steered by algorithms, privacy is entirely gone, digital media is actively fracturing their mental health, they are forced to confront a reality where they have very little control. So acting like everything is okay is a psychological defense mechanism against overwhelming digital dread. True. Now again, this is not to fearmonger. I'm just explaining how things work, right? So this next one, I believe what I was telling it was, now in, let's say, cybersecurity or computer systems, what you're trying to do is get to the core layer. The closer you can get to the core layer, like the kernel of how things are operating, the more control you can have over the entire operation. And so to me, those are parallels. It's like the way that media algorithms operate are trying to get to the core of our beliefs, because it's our beliefs that shape literally everything we do. And once they can control our beliefs, well, now they have the keys to the kingdom, and most of us are completely unaware. So it says, you are identifying the root vulnerability. The cognitive layer, meaning our thinking layer, is the ultimate attack surface. Once they can get down to the layer where we think and our beliefs, it is the ultimate attack surface. If they wanted to pit two groups against each other, and they have the ability to feed them different information, which they do, and they already own their thought process and beliefs, they don't change it through one video. They're playing the long game. They're like, okay, I know if I do this for long enough, eventually I'll break this person or this group or get whatever I want. So they don't just do it once. They do it over and over and over. And so over time, before we know it, we've taken a side. We've adopted a side. So in security terms, if the human mind is the operating system, so if your mind is like the core operating system, like a computer, it doesn't matter how strong the external firewalls, which in this case it's saying laws, democratic institutions, or cybersecurity protocols are, if the OS itself, if the operating system itself is easily compromised. So all the external factors do not matter once someone has control of your beliefs and your thoughts, right? I think we'd all agree with that, because that's the core of our operating system as human beings. By targeting childhood development and exploiting the baseline cognitive limits of the average adult, digital systems are essentially executing a slow motion privilege escalation attack on human autonomy. Now, a privilege escalation attack would basically mean, so in cybersecurity, you want to see what privileges this user has. So you might get in with a low-level user, and over time you'll escalate your privileges. You'll move up to hopefully an administrator, and now you can control everything. So what it's saying here is that what they're doing is slowly doing that. They're getting in. They put these videos in front of us that seem innocent, right? Seem harmless, but over time, they're basically increasing their privilege escalation. They're basically escalating their privilege within our mind. Because now what they've built is trust. Trust in that we cannot help but scrolling. We keep watching. They keep putting information. Now their user privileges rise in our mind, because now we are not even thinking about it anymore. We're just trusting this source. It says, when you look at this through the lens of a weak mind versus a strong mind, the digital ecosystem is actively engineering a more penetrable population in several specific ways. So this is where it turns a little bit, but now it gets to the core of everything. So it says the digital ecosystem is actively engineering, so the ecosystem is actively creating a more penetrable population, a population they can control, that they can penetrate more easily in several specific ways. This first one, exploiting the child brain architecture. So what I was telling it was that no matter how intelligent a lot of us think we are, we gauge it usually by facts on the surface, right? Oh, that person knows a lot of things, therefore they are intelligent. Whereas maturity level is something completely different. Being able to control your emotions and control your beliefs is completely different than just knowing a bunch of facts. I believe at our core level, we're all pretty much children in our thought processes. It says, statistically proven that the average American adult reads at a 7th to 8th grade level. So as human beings, once we learn to do something good enough, we basically don't really care to learn anymore. That's how we tend to operate. So that's what it goes over on this first part here. It says, federal studies consistently show the average American adult reads at a 7th to 8th grade level. Digital media is perfectly optimized for this because basically they're dealing with children, which we all are, until you learn to control your thoughts and beliefs and control the inputs and understand how everything works. Cognitive offloading. We are outsourcing memory, navigation, and critical thinking to devices. The brain operates on a use it or lose it principle. When algorithms do the thinking, synthesizing, and summarizing for us, the neural pathways required for deep analytical thought begin to atrophy. So let's go over that because there's a lot built in there. So yeah, so we're using technology for memory, navigation, critical thinking, which means if we're constantly outsourcing memory to technology, our memory muscle gets weaker. If we're constantly outsourcing our critical thinking capabilities to technology, our critical thinking muscles get weakened, right? And we can't use them as effectively. It says the neural pathways required for deep analytical thought. So for deep thinking, those neural pathways begin to atrophy, so begin to kind of become useless. The path is there, but we can't really use it. One way I like to look at it is, if you think of a walking trail, there's paths to follow. Those paths stay there because people are continually following them. There's vegetation all around, but those paths remain. If no one used those paths for years upon years, what would happen? Weeds would overgrow it. It would be, eventually you wouldn't see the path anymore because it'd be overcome with flora and plants and everything, right? And weeds. So you'd have to carve the path again, and it would take time to carve that path again. Our neural pathways are the same way. That when we don't use them, they start to atrophy. They're not as deeply embedded in our mind. Now it says the death of nuance. Complex societal issues require high-level cognitive stamina to understand. Social media, however, focuses information into 15-second videos or short text bursts. This trains the brain to think in binary terms, good versus bad, us versus them, which mimics the emotional, uncritical processing of a young child. I like the way that they put that last part. That is how a child sees things. A child sees the world in a very binary way. Good, bad, pain, pleasure, us, them. That's the way children operate. They haven't been in the world long enough to have bigger reasoning faculties. It says complex societal issues require high-level cognitive stamina to understand. This means that when you get into complex issues in life or in the world, it takes a certain part of our brain. Knowing a bunch of facts is not the same as having cognitive stamina. Cognitive stamina is like having physical stamina. Your ability to think deeply for a longer period of time. It burns glucose, it burns calories, it wears us out. You know, if you have a job where you have to think heavily for long periods of time and at the end of the day you find yourself drained, this level of thinking is required when you're at the top level. If you're just in control of your own life, you only need to think about so many things, right? Like if you don't have kids or family to think about, then you have to think, okay, what do I need for today? If you have to think about, like when my kids were younger, back in the day, we used to take them to Universal Studios a lot, right? Just to do that, I had to think of, are we going to have food for the day? I have to make sure I have sunblock. They were toddlers at that time, so make sure they have extra change of clothes. They would like to get in the splash zone and get wet, so make sure that they have their sandals. A lot of things I have to think about in order to make sure everything goes fine. If it was just me, it doesn't matter. I could just go and I'll figure it out. Now imagine in society, if you are over a large group of people, if you're someone that's leading people, the more responsibilities you have, it literally takes a different part of your mind, and it's cognitive stamina. It's not just about knowing facts, it's that your mind can process information like a computer. If you have a more powerful computer, it can process more information. It's basically the same thing. Your mind can process more information. But when the media is eroding that capability in us as human beings, and especially as children, what does that mean? It means going forward, you're going to have fewer people that are able to think deeply. So when you have people in charge that aren't being fed this or that aren't succumbing to this, they can call the shots and all the people below are gonna be like, okay, not because they necessarily choose to just follow, but that's the way they've been brought up. That part of their brain, it has been worn away. Will not occur to them that they have other options. Now, this next part says the systematic dismantling of childhood development. If the goal is to build a strong mind capable of resisting manipulation, the foundational years are being deeply compromised. So this is the future. This is all of our young kids. How they're taking in information right now is going to directly dictate what their future is going to look like. Now, a lot of us have to understand also, this is not like any other time in history. Like growing up, a lot of us didn't have all this information overload. We didn't have tablets with constant scrolling. We didn't have all these distractions. We always had distractions, like kids always had toys, or you go outside and play. Those are very different than having a million different options in front of you. And like it says, the foundational years are being deeply compromised right now. It says dopamine threshold hijacking. A child's brain develops its reward centers before its prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of logic and impulse control, is fully formed. By exposing developing brains to hyper-stimulating, algorithmically perfected feedback loops, tech companies are setting the baseline boredom threshold dangerously high. A mind that cannot tolerate boredom cannot engage in deep reading, sustained focus, or critical self-reflection. That last part is important. If you can't stay what people would call bored, that means you're not going to be able to engage in deep reading, sustained focus, or critical self-reflection. Being aware, being self-aware, being able to think creatively and think critically, and use your reasoning capabilities requires quiet moments of reflection, what some people would call boredom. But when you learn to do it effectively, it's actually more entertaining than anything you can scroll. when you learn to get in your mind and create images, but you have control of your world, which is really all that matters. If a child is used to just scrolling all day, and I'm talking young, probably like even over 2 years old, if they're used to scrolling all day and as soon as that stimulation goes away, they're saying, I'm bored, and they repeat that even through 7th grade, they will not be able to handle deep thinking because that didn't form in their mind. It says right here, the brain develops its reward centers before even that part of their brain is fully formed. Automatically, their brain is thinking, this is my reward. I'm getting my instant reward. I'm scrolling, reward, which means what? They're not going to control their lives, which means someone else will. To be honest, it's already happening to a lot of us. If you ask the average person why they believe what they believe, a lot of us can't explain why because we've just inherited beliefs. Usually it was inherited through maybe parents, teachers, authorities. Now a lot of our beliefs are inherited through social media. Next part says the erosion of executive function. Executive function includes working memory, flexible thinking, and self-control. Studies show that heavy screen and media exposure in early childhood correlates with deficits in these areas. We are raising a generation with a diminished capacity to pause, reflect, and say, wait, is this piece of media trying to manipulate me? So we're basically raising kids that are losing the capability to even ask, am I being manipulated? One of the most bothersome parts of this whole thing, which is a whole nother topic, is how what they're basically doing is sedating people. I mean, more people now than ever are on anxiety medication, depression medication, and it's great for business in the medical field, but it's not good for the human being. And I'm not saying there's not benefits to some of these medicines, but to give it to everybody. Next, it talks about the psychological patch for a strong mind. From a security standpoint, a strong mind isn't just about high intelligence. It's about cognitive resilience, the ability to recognize when an external force is trying to hijack your emotional state. So think about it. Let's say you're intelligent. By most people's metric, you're intelligent. You know a lot of facts. You're knowledgeable in a lot of things. But if you're not able to tell if someone is hijacking control of your beliefs, well, then your intelligence can be dangerous, right? If you're a leader and you're very intelligent and someone else can easily trick you into believing something else, now you become someone who can use their intelligence in ways that can harm people, right? So being able to control your beliefs is equally, if not more important than just being intellectually or factually intelligent, right? It says right now the digital environment behaves like a sophisticated adversary that relies on social engineering. It bypasses intellectual defenses by attacking emotional vulnerabilities, fear, tribal belonging, and vanity. If a person lacks the emotional maturity or the cognitive stamina to realize they're being manipulated, they become a node in a botnet of human behavior, reacting exactly how the algorithm predicted they would. They put a preview of a video in front of you. How long do you watch it? Do you click away? They say, okay, I know your process here. Let's try this. That's why it says It behaves like a sophisticated adversary. It's like if you're in a physical fight with somebody, a lot of fighters will say if someone wins you over mentally, they already won the fight. So if you're fighting against someone physically, but they know they can control your beliefs, it doesn't matter how strong or fast you are, if they can make you believe less about yourself, all the knowledge that you put on the surface has no bearing because they've already infiltrated you from the back door, right? That's what it's saying. It's the digital environment behaves like a sophisticated adversary that relies on social engineering. It bypasses your intellect because what it does is it attacks your emotional vulnerabilities. So if you've ever known a person that's intellectually strong, but gets completely crushed by an event, by a relationship, by the loss of somebody, naturally, because these things are emotionally taxing, emotionally devastating. And when our emotions are put on trial like that, all of our reasoning goes out the window. Emotions really control everything we do. You have people in prison because of emotions. A lot of smart people in prison because of emotions. Emotions took over, they made one decision, and now they're paying the consequences for it. It's not just in prison though, it's the same for all of us. Once our emotions get involved, and once we cannot control them, that dictates what we do. That's why a lot of times you'll talk to someone after they do something and they'll sit there and say, what did I do? Why would I do that? Because in the moment, you were emotionally heated, emotionally charged, and you took action. Well, if someone can control those emotions, not just for one person, but for millions of people, that makes them powerful and it makes a lot of other people very vulnerable. That's another thing about this whole process where by using media and algorithms, you're not just affecting a person. Think about it like 50, 75 years ago, however long it was. If you wanted to attack somebody, you could really only attack that person. You couldn't use one method to attack millions of people. Now with this, by any change that they make, they can affect millions upon millions of people. On a global scale, that's pretty powerful. And this is why, again, they're just doing what they were built to do. We have to be aware of what we're allowing into our minds. We have to understand how it works, understand that our brains are constantly connecting associations. Our pathways are constantly being carved. So we have to look at our beliefs. What do I believe? Is this a path that I created? And if it's not, I need to drop that path and create the path that I want to create. When you create a new path, it's like hiking, creating a new path where there's just a bunch of vegetation. You start creating it, and at first you don't see it very much, but the more you go down that path, the more it starts to get deeply embedded into your mind, and those neurons connect, and that starts to be your belief, and it starts to take your life in that direction. It says, by keeping the population's cognitive capacity hovering at adolescent level, the architects of these platforms ensure that the population remains highly suggestible, easily distracted, and profoundly profitable. Now, one thing that's interesting here, it says, by keeping the population's cognitive capacity hovering at adolescent level. Basically, it's saying by keeping us thinking like adolescents. And I find it fascinating. Sometimes you'll see two grown people, grown adults, sharing videos with each other that seem like they're made for children. It's like people doing stupid pranks or something. There's nothing wrong with like laughing at things and getting enjoyment out of things. But when this is all people are sharing with all day long, that's exactly what it's saying. It's saying that it's keeping us thinking at an adolescent level. It says by doing that, the architects, the creators of the platforms, ensure that the population overall remains highly suggestible, so they can use a juvenile entertainment and still control your beliefs about yourself and about the world. It doesn't, beliefs aren't crafted necessarily by just high-level thinking videos. They find ways to embed the messages in whatever videos they want. So they keep people highly suggestible, easily distracted, and profoundly profitable. As you can imagine, it's not profitable for the individual, it's profitable for the people in charge that run all these things. So these are questions that I'll pose to you guys. Given how deeply embedded these digital loops are in daily life and schools, how do you guys think we can begin to build strong minds again? Do you think the solution lies in aggressive digital fasting and personal discipline? Is the solution in getting off of social media? Or do we need to completely overhaul how we teach media literacy and critical thinking to the next generation? Do we teach them to use the tools in an intelligent way? What do you guys think? I personally think it's probably going to be a combination of both. If you're using technology smartly these days, you can get ahead faster than ever, easily faster than ever. So I think it's a combination. We need to teach youth, and not just youth, but all of us, that we can use technology, use AI, use YouTube, use all the technological tools that we have to better ourselves. But we also need to know what their goal is. Their goal is just to hold our attention. Our goal, we have to go in with a purpose, go in with a mission. I'm going in to learn this thing. I want to learn this. I want to be better at this. So be aware of what's going on in your mind. Take control of your thoughts, your beliefs. Take control of how you spend your time so that when you're online, you can see, you can notice when you're starting to get distracted. Don't go down deep rabbit holes that are not serving you and not serving your purpose in life. I'll leave a link in the description. I have a free resource, free ebook about taking back control of your life. And it gives you a couple of tips on being aware of some of the things that we're doing on a regular basis that we may not be aware of. And it all starts with awareness. It all starts with when you're scrolling or you're on social media, noticing when you're starting to stray, when you're starting to get distracted, when you're starting to go off course. Once you start noticing it, then you can make a different decision. What's happening right now for most people is just doom scrolling, man. Just scrolling. There's this saying that you can't escape a prison that you don't know that you're in. And that's where a lot of people are now. If you're just scrolling, you're so involved in the process, you don't even realize there's other things you could be doing to better your life. So hopefully you found value in this video. Like I said, I found this conversation crazy interesting, and I wanted to get the information out. Hopefully it helps you guys. Hopefully it helps your guys' kids, your guys' families. And if you guys like this format, let me know. I'll make more videos like this. Everything is about taking control of your life. This is the only life that we get. We got to be able to control our minds, control our beliefs, and craft the life that we want. Thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you in the next one.